Hi guys, welcome back. So in the last video we explored the Jungian cognitive functions, how they're derived, and some history about Carl Jung and his work there. And in today's video what we want to do is we'll try to derive the functions but in a bit of a different way. So we'll reuse some of what we did last time, but now we'll introduce a couple of other concepts. So first let's recap what we did before and then we're going to go to the new things. So what we did before was that we started from experience and then we analyzed it and found out that according to Carl Jung there are two aspects of experience at the highest level, which are perception and judgment, which is this layer number 1, annotated with P and J respectively. And then after that the perception process can be split into two other processes which are called sensing and intuition, sensing with S, intuition with N. And the judgment process can be split in thinking and feeling, which is annotated with T and F. And then we introduce another concept of orientation, which includes extroversion and introversion. And when we attach this to the four natural processes, we get the cognitive functions, Jungian cognitive functions. So from this diagram, we know that this part here, so this here is what we call natural processes. Okay, so I'm going to expand this. So, oops. So those are the natural processes, and this part at the bottom are the Jungian cognitive functions. So this is this part here, this layer. And what we want to do today is we want to restructure this a bit. So we'll introduce a couple more concepts. Okay, so we can go back now. And for now, we'll actually remove this here, this layer. Okay, move everything here. And what we did before is that we introduced the natural process on the third layer, but now what we want to do is actually introduce the orientation concept in the third layer. So orientation, as we discussed before, is connected to introversion and extroversion. So if we introduce it in the third layer, what we will get is introverted perception, extroverted perception, and then introverted judgment and extroverted judgment. And from this point on, we can introduce the cognitive functions again in the fourth layer, but this time they will be structured and grouped in a bit of a different way. So for introverted perception, we already know there are two functions, which is the SI, which is introverted sensing, and also the introverted intuition, since intuition and sensing are the two natural processes. And analogically for all three of the other types are, for the PE, extroverted perception, we have extroverted sensing and extroverted intuition. For JI, we have extroverted, this is introverted, so introverted thinking and introverted feeling. And for JE, we have extroverted thinking and extroverted feeling. And we arrive at the same cognitive functions at the end, but we arrive in a different way. And this layer here, this third layer, is what we will call from now on. So this will be called, okay, let me get the text here. Oops. So stop drawing. So this here will be called modes of operation. So those are the modes of operation here. And in today's video, we're going to explore a bit of those. So why is this useful? Why do we not just use the previous way to introduce the cognitive functions? Because these modes of operations that we have here, they give us a bit more interesting data, and they can help us also type people if we understand what are the differences between those. So now we can go to this table here, which is going to use this modes of operation, and it's going to explain some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses of different people depending on the modes of operation. So we can start here with the PI, and we have PE, and then we have JI, and then we have JE. Okay, so for the PI process, again, the sub-processes are SI and NI, introverted sensing and introverted intuition. And what are the strengths of the PI process? So people who have a dominant PI process usually have the strength that they first do preparation. So they have prepare and then act. So this is very common for people with PI. And this applies both to people who have dominant introverted sensing and people who have dominant introverted intuition. And it's very easy to tell if you communicate with such a person for a long period of time, you will notice that they feel very uncomfortable to be put into a situation where they have to act immediately or act in the moment. They usually prefer to just prepare beforehand and be ready for whatever is coming. So these people like to prepare, like planning. And another strength is that they are, I would say, narrativistic. So maybe I'll put here narratives. So what this means is that usually these people are not very affected by in-the-moment things, again, connected to the prepared and then act principle. But the important part here is that they usually have this personal narrative that runs through their life, and how this manifests for SI, for introverted sensing, is usually connected to their memory, to their past. So they do an overview and they constantly try to check their memory and check their past and have this narrative, this personal story that they continue to revisit time and time again. And for the introverted intuition, this usually applies to having this grand plan for their future, which they get stuck in their head thinking about it, but sometimes they're not able to act on it. But it's again in terms of narrative, so they think in a time-bound manner where they think what's going to happen now. So they think in a sequential way. They start with something, and then in a sequence they enact the events that happen after that. So it's event after event after event. This is the narrativistic thinking. And then for the weaknesses, we have here narrow-minded. So as you can imagine, if you have these advantages of prepared, then act, and then narratives, at the same time, this can create an individual which is very narrow-minded, where sometimes there are options who they do not consider since they have these narratives and they continue to live in this narrative. So how this manifests with the SI and NI is that for the introverted sensing, usually they're not able to consider different options and they get stuck in their routines. So they do the same thing over and over again and they're not able to change. It feels very uncomfortable. And for the introverted intuition, it's kind of similar, but they also have the additional problem of not being able to act. So they're stuck with designing their plan, but their plan might not even be connected to reality since they're not using their time to test things, but they're actually using their time to just think about it, think about stuff. So they'll have trouble with action. Okay, this is for introverted perception. Now if we move to extroverted perception, this contains two functions, extroverted sensing and extroverted intuition. And what are the strengths? So the main strength you can say is exploration. So how this appears in both options is for extroverted sensing, usually exploration is associated with some kind of daredevil activities where they go and try things that are risky. So if you look at people who do base jumping or some other kind of like a motorcycle driving, this kind of high risk things, they might be associated with extroverted sensing. So this can also be, of course, I list this as a strength here, but it can also be a weakness depending on the situation. But exploration is a classic sign of extroverted perception, and this, when we look through the lens of extroverted intuition instead of extroverted sensing, the way that exploration is manifested is that those people usually try different things. It's not as extreme as the extroverted sensing in terms of risk, but they like to do it more in terms of ideas. So they brainstorm, they're very good at brainstorming, they're very good at generating ideas, generating options, and they like to talk a lot about those things. Okay, this is exploration. Then another thing is animated, I put here. So what animated is that usually when you talk to people who have extroverted perception as their lead process, you can, they're one of the easier ones to tell because they give so many signs about this extroverted perception, and they are very, very animated during conversation, during events. You can see them like their whole body is activated all the time, and when they communicate with other people, they're very physically, they're moving a lot, so physically they're very active. This is what I mean by animated. And this is a very, very good sign of extroverted perception if you check this. Also, they're very initiating because of the extroverted orientation as well. So initiation is there as well. And as a weakness, I can say trouble with consistency. So you might expect that people who like exploration, they might have trouble with keeping focus, so focusing on one thing for a long period of time. And this is indeed what happens for people who have extroverted perception as their leading process. And those people, they like to explore, they jump from one thing to another, and if they don't develop properly, they might have trouble with staying in the same place. This applies both to extroverted sensing and extroverted intuition. You might find such people just moving jobs very quickly, like working for a couple of months at one place, then going to another place, then getting really bored very quickly with something and moving on to another thing. Okay, this is extroverted perception versus introverted perception. And then for the introverted judgment, we can have here as the strength, we can say clarification. So what I mean by that is that usually people who have introverted judgment, they're extremely good at clarifying things. And how this manifests is in terms of TI, in terms of introverted thinking, the clarification process is about first principle thinking and the ability to derive the true statement from something. So a lot of their time they spend in trying to be as precise as possible. So this is their clarifying process. And from the FI, so the other option, introverted feeling, how this works is that those people are very attuned and very aware of what they're feeling at any moment, and they're aware of their feeling, not just what, but precisely what. So most people, when somebody says I'm happy or I'm sad, they are probably envisioning one kind of thing, one kind of emotion. But for high introverted feeling users, they can actually be very attuned to the emotion to such an extent that they can have like 5 different shades of happy or 15 different shades of happy, where they know precisely which one of those they're feeling. So this is the qualification. Then I put here autonomy. So usually people who have JI as their major process are very oriented towards themselves and also prefer to do things on their own a lot of the time, because they feel like other people lack the precision they have because of this qualification process. And also sometimes they feel like other people are missing the point because the methodology that other people use is not precise enough. So this is again because of this qualification process, and this results in people liking people with the JI process as leading one, liking autonomy. And of course you can expect that from such cognitive makeup, the problem that they might have is that they disregard groups. So since they're so precise and they're so capable of clarifying and defining something very precisely, usually they can disregard the opinions of the groups because it's not detailed enough, and the people in the group, they have not put enough enough time to make something as clear as possible. And how this manifests is, for example, for TA user, they might say, okay, whatever those people are doing is stupid because they have themselves pondered over the topic for so much time and understand it a lot more precisely than the people in the group. And for the FI users, it might be that whatever other people are doing is just preventing them from expressing their individuality, or the group values should not be applied to everyone in the same way. It should be more nuanced. And since they're all about nuance, they disregard what the group thinks. Okay, and for extroverted judgment, what we have as a strength is organization. Maybe I'll say it management. Maybe organization is better actually. Organization. So the J elites, what they do is they usually are very good at organizing things and organizing not just on personal level, which is also true, but also in a corporate, in a work environment. So on personal level, what they do is usually they have to-do lists and they're able to achieve goals or achieve tasks very well. This applies both to extroverted thinking and extroverted feeling ones. And in a social environment or in a corporate environment, they're able to also be very good employees because they are able to execute on whatever task is given to them very efficiently, which is why what the current corporate system is actually kind of seeking right now for an employee. So this is one of the strong points, is organization. Another strong point is they're group focused, which of course can be a strong and a weak point. So this manifests for the extroverted thinking. This manifests as usually in the organization, they are able to judge someone's performance very independent of feelings. So they can be very objective, you can say, about the performance. And they usually like status and they respect status. So this is kind of how this is associated with the group focus. And for the extroverted feeling, the group focus is about social environment, and they're usually very good at like organizing parties or organizing social events, as well as have a large collection of friends or a large social group which they are a part of. So this is the group focus, and as a weakness you can say lack of personal values. So how this manifests for the extroverted thinking types is that they can, again, as I talked in the last video, they can steamroll people. So they can be very focused and driven to achieve something. And if someone is not capable enough, can really say to their face, and also don't take into consideration like additional things that might be the cause of that, but they might just disregard them immediately. And for the F users, for the extroverted viewers, this might manifest as them being too much in too much harmony with the group they're in, and having this group opinion. So whatever the group thinks, they're thinking the same thing, and they don't have any own opinion of their own. So this is what they can be put into this kind of situation. Yeah, and I think this is all for the mode of operation for this video. Thank you guys, and see you next time.